The story of John F. Kennedy has been told 1,000 times since that fateful day in Dallas, Texas 50 years ago. A new kind of leader, glamorous, young, full of a promise that was never quite fulfilled. But not much is known about the man whom the Warren Commission says pulled the trigger. One of history's greatest enigmas, 24-year-old Lee Harvey Oswald. Who was he? Why did he do it? And did he act alone? Steve Gillen from the History Channel joins us now to try and shed some light on questions that are now a half-century old. Good morning, Steve. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Steve, I've got to ask you right off the bat. For 50 years, the question has been the same. Did Lee Harvey Oswald act alone? What do you think?
Yes, I believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was the sole assassin. I believe that he fired all the shots at the presidential motorcade on November 22nd. I think the question for me, and the question we pose in the show and in the book, is why he did it. And I think there's a possibility that, that he may have been encouraged to assassinate the president. And I think that the Warren Commission said that he was a lone nut, that he was essentially a sociopath. I believe that he was a political assassin. I believe that he assassinated President Kennedy for political reasons. He did it in order to prove his fidelity to the Cuban Revolution, and he had hoped after the assassination to be welcomed back in Cuba, welcomed to Cuba as a conquering hero.
So you're saying that Oswald, who lived in Russia for a time, he actually met his wife there. He was a supporter of Castro and Cuba. You're saying that the Cuban government, perhaps Castro himself, could have incentivized Oswald into killing Kennedy and then being welcomed back to that island?
Well, I think it's more complicated than that. 3 weeks before Oswald shoots Kennedy, he's in Mexico City trying to get a visa to go to Cuba. He shuttles back and forth between the Soviet embassy and the Cuban consulate. They deny him a visa. And at one point he says, maybe I should kill President Kennedy. So I think it's possible that Cuban intelligence egged him on, encouraged him to do it. Castro had to be very careful. He could not have his fingers on an attempt to assassinate the President of the United States, but perhaps Cuban intelligence officials freelancing could have encouraged him to do it and perhaps even provided him with some kind of reward, a belief that he'd be rewarded. I don't think he ever would have made it back to Mexico City, certainly never would have made it to Cuba. But I think if you look at those 48 hours, the Oswald that I discovered in the 48 hours after he shoots JFK, the Oswald, we recreated the interrogations of Lee Harvey Oswald. This guy's not a nut. J.W. Fritz, who's the lead investigator, handled every homicide in Dallas going back to Bonnie and Clyde, is absolutely convinced that Oswald's his man. But he also believes he's too good, he's too well trained, he knows how to deflect questions, he knows when to answer questions. The guy's more complicated than the Warren Commission made him out to be, and I believe his motives were more complicated. He's simply not a lone nut.
So if Jack Ruby, if he's not a lone nut, was Jack Ruby sent to silence him? I want to read you a quick quote. G. Robert Blakely of the House Select Committee on Assassination said in 1979, and I quote, that Jack Ruby stalked Oswald on behalf of organized crime.
I don't believe that. I don't believe it. If you just look at the timeline of Sunday morning, Oswald was supposed to be transferred at 10 o'clock in the morning. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Jack Ruby's sitting in his underwear in his apartment. He goes to Western Union to send some money, and it's just a happen chance. If Oswald had not stopped to change his sweater at the last minute and delayed his departure by 3 minutes, Jack Ruby would have missed him. So Jack Ruby had other opportunities. Jack Ruby's in the municipal building on Friday and Saturday. He had a number of opportunities to shoot Lee Harvey Oswald if he wanted to do it. You know, the whole thing sounds so implausible, but it's the most plausible of all the implausible definitions of what took place that day.
Yeah, and one final question. If Oswald, if he were just a patsy like he claimed in the Dallas police headquarters there, why would he shoot Officer Tippit? My question is, certain documents are still sealed related to the assassination. Some won't be opened until the year 2024. Why is that? Does that speak to a conspiracy in some way?
Well, first of all, I think almost all the documents have been declassified. After the Oliver Stone movie in 1991, Congress passed a law it's led to the largest, most systematic declassification of documents in American history, some 6 million documents. There's still a very small number of documents that are classified. I don't believe that the answer to Lee Harvey Oswald and the Kennedy assassination does not lie in the National Archives in Washington, D.C. If there's a document anywhere, it's somewhere in Cuba.
Okay. Steve, I really enjoyed speaking with you. The show is Lee Harvey Oswald, 48 Hours to Live. It's Friday at 10 p.m. on the History Channel. Steve Gillen, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Rob.